Hello, I'm Julian from Bishop Sullivan, the letting specialist in Brighton Hove, and as the weather gets wetter and colder, thoughts always turn to those less fortunate. And this week we're looking at homelessness, and there is a sneak peek of a charity event coming up at the end of the video if you want to help make a difference. Now, politicians are supposed to be there for the good of society, but they need votes to have influence, and there lieth the problem. A recent video touched on government plans to scrap Section 21. The Lib Dems and Labour agree with this policy. And the industry, as always, is doing its best to advise likely consequences, just like the tenant fees bill, but will the government fail to listen again? Now, Section 21 does not record the reason for the notice, although it is widely understood rent arrears are the main driver, followed by the landlord selling and antisocial behaviour. Government are likely to enhance Section 8 notice for the route to possession. However, this does record the reason, as well as a likely county court judgment to reclaim any rent arrears. A CCJ would prevent the tenants from passing referencing for a next potential home or obtaining any credit for 5 years. Now, while local authorities have a legal obligation to rehouse those who have been made homeless by Section 21, they do not for those who may have technically made themselves homeless by Section 8. Now, data from the Ministry of Justice reports that there were over 22,000 accelerated possession claims issued in 2018, or Section 21 claims. Of those accelerated possession claims, over 10,000 resulted in evictions carried out by county court bailiffs. So if Section 21 is binned, and these tenants cannot be rehoused by social housing or the private rental sector due to a CCJ, where exactly will they go? Not only above, but scrapping Section 21 will likely lead to a percent of landlords exiting the market, since regaining possession to sell from the tenants in arrears or antisocial behaviour will become harder. The National Landlords Association's recent survey estimates approximately 1 million homes will be lost in the sector, and this will push rents up. How does that actually help tenants? Now, Labour are promising many things, including rent controls. The last time rent controls were used in the UK, it led to the PRS shrinking to the smallest on record. So choice goes down, rents go up. And another Labour vote-winning policy is to propose right to buy your rental property. A recent survey by Landbay showed only 42% of UK tenants actually want to buy, suggesting that lifestyle choices are driving this change. For example, 25% of those surveys stated flexibility was the main reason for renting. Now, if Labour win, and this is made into policy, landlords will again exit the market at the moment and price they choose, reducing stock, increasing rents. I've heard this before somewhere. Now, what happens to vulnerable tenants on low income? With waiting lists for social housing often up to 12 months, where do they go in this scenario? How does any of the above actually help people, barring MPs? The National Housing Federation recently advised the housing crisis is affecting 1 in 7 of us across the UK, or 8.4 million. Others are living in overcrowded homes or cannot afford to move out of unsuitable properties where they live, for example, with parents or ex-partners. Some are at risk of homelessness, while others are stuck in properties they cannot physically get around in, or are families with no outdoor space. Now, almost half that total, or 3.6 million, would do better to live in a social rented home. And this is the crux of the problem: lack of affordable housing, especially social housing. The annual homelessness monitor shows that 70% of local authorities in England are struggling to find any stable housing for homeless people in their area, while a striking 89% reported difficulties in finding private rented accommodation. Part of the issue is that the private rental sector is designed for professionals rather than social tenants, which often affects choice. And on the other side, there are currently 1.1 million people on the social housing waiting list. The amount of social housing for rent fell from the peak of around 5 million in the early 80s to just under 4 million in the mid-2000s. It has been slowly rising since, but slowly. This has mainly been driven by an increase in housing association homes, and the proportion of all social housing provided by council has generally been falling since the 80s. Full Facts charities state that this is falling roughly in line with right-to-buy purchases since Thatcher's time. And these sold social housing units should have been replaced one for one by local authorities who self-regulate that obligation. And to cap it all off, housing association units are more expensive to run than social housing, so this approach is costing local communities more in council tax. UK population has grown 7.8 million since the 80s. Affordable housing has not kept up, and that is the main reason why we have a housing crisis and 320,000 UK homeless, according to Shelter. The National Housing Federation is calling for 12.8 billion a year over the next 10 years to build 340,000 new homes, including 140,000 new social homes. Homeless charity Shelter reported in January 2019 1.3 million homes are needed in the UK to solve the housing crisis. The government is planning 250,000 homes for social rent by 2022, but we have heard housing promises from most of the 17 housing ministers over the last 20 years. So for the good of those suffering from continually poor government policy, what we need is action, not words. Now, if you feel strongly about homelessness, the second big city sleepout in Brighton will be happening at the I360 late December this year, raising much needed funds for the Clock Tower Sanctuary, who help the young homeless back onto their feet. Now, due to the time of year, this is definitely for the brave and hardy. Now, if you are interested, please message me below and I will provide more details in the coming weeks. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Julian from Bishop Sullivan.